Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of Beyond the Table, a show here on Iconic where we're going to be talking about the history of gaming. This thing that we love to do. We love to hang out and sit around a table and play. I just got back from a weekend of second edition D&D that I run for my friend group. They all fly in and we continue a D&D campaign for this is our 8th year running, so getting the old group back together, so once a year. But my guest tonight, all of my widgets have failed me. My camera nearly failed me. My internet was like, meh, maybe not. But we're live, and I have with me the writer of Night Train, Mr. John Goff himself. John, thanks for joining me on this episode of Beyond the Table.
Well, thanks for having me. I didn't realize it was the first one.
It is. We're trying something new. It's just come up that I've got so many just connections to people who are able to kind of share all of this stuff and add into this history. And I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it disappear because it's the game that I love. It's something I'm really passionate about. I get to write for it. I get to work in the industry. I get to publish books. And I just did not want to see something like all of these cool stories that you hear at conventions and then sort of grow into urban legends. I'm like, let's record some of this down. So
Awesome.
So let's start off. Let's talk about Night Train. Night Train is kicking butt here. I'm going to post the link in the chat. If you haven't backed Night Train, why not? It's got 17 days to go. It had an initial funding goal of $5,000, and possibly we could cross 100,000 on the stream tonight while we're chatting.
Here's hoping.
Here's hoping. So it's the 25th anniversary. It was the first adventure that came out for Deadlands, right?
No, it was actually the third.
Okay.
The third dime novel.
Okay.
Now, I think there were other adventures that came out before, like the Marshall Screen adventure.
Right.
And I'm trying to think if I don't think the Book of the Dead, the Harrowed source book,
Mm-hmm.
it might have had an adventure, and I would honestly have to look at the dates exactly to see which one came first. But the first dime novel was Shane's Perdition's Daughter. Wow.
Yes.
I just locked up. That was it contained the origin story for Ronan Lynch, who's kind of the signature character for Deadlands. And then
Matt Forbick did the second one, right?
Yes, Independence Day, which introduced a recurring villain, the Butcher, and also one of my favorite characters, Hank One Eye Ketchum. So, and then I got the third one. So
Night Train. So in the write-up of the Kickstarter, Shane speaks very highly of this D&D game that you ran.
Yes.
What can you tell us about this D&D game? What can you tell us about Shane as a player all those years ago?
Okay, so I've tracked that all the way back to my own high school D&D campaign and give credit where credit's due. Because I just went to my high school reunion this weekend and I got to see two of the players in that original campaign, and we've stayed friends from high school, as well as the DM who ran back then. His name was Dan Clark, and we had a really eclectic group of players, just about from every walk of high school life you could imagine, all the way up to the class president. And you would never have thought this group would come together, but somehow we all did, to play this game. And the DM ran this really, at the time, to me, felt really innovative, wilderness-based campaign where we explored and interacted and felt like we were, vital parts of the whole story. And then I went to college, and I got there about 3 years before Shane, I think. And I had the chance to meet with another group that was very active. I think, throughout college at any given time, there were probably 3 to 4 campaigns running with different GMs and all of us just incestuously playing between.
Uh-huh.
And I might have played a little bit too many games. And it was my first introduction to beer. And you mix those two together, they don't, that equation does not end in the best GPA. So after my junior year, Virginia Tech and I decided we should take a year apart and see other people. And so I had this year to work on this campaign and kind of devote a lot of my energy into this, among other things. And we organized a group, and I kind of wanted to build on the group we had and bring in new people. So this was way back before the internet. I'm not going to say how long, but the way that you met players then was by basically posting notices in the local
Yeah.
game store.
I have posted many of those notices over my life.
Yes. And it brought in once again, a very eclectic group. We had some of the original members from the other, for lack of better term, gang that kind of formed the core. But then one of the respondents was Shane and his friend John Hopler, and Shane can tell the whole story about how he met John Hopler. But they came in together and later brought in more players to the group themselves. But also well, I won't go too far into that, but we just had a very diverse group, including a guy who had a rodeo belt buckle from Arkansas, where he had actually won rodeos and always wore cowboy boots, the shirt and everything. It was just a great group because it was just so across the board player style and just everything about it. And at one point, we may have had 9 players consistently every Friday night. We would get together and play this because, well, we were gamers, and
Yeah,
we
that's what you do.
most of us didn't have dates.
Yeah.
Shane Shane was still, I think Shane was in a relationship still from high school with his now wife, so they've been together forever.
Oh.
But she was back home in Clintwood while he was in Virginia Tech. So none of us had anything to do on Friday night but game. And in the game, Shane played a couple of characters, but the one that I most remember was a thief. And to this day, I can't remember if his first thief, if this character's name was Despair, spelled D''YS. I can't spell it. I can barely. You ask Shane, I can barely spell words, much less character names. But Shane was a bit of an instigator. Um, he played a thief like you would expect a thief to be played. He was always getting into trouble. And within the group, there were always these little factions that were sometimes plotting against each other, sometimes just plotting to advance themselves. And there was an ongoing thing where someone had stolen the Paladin's banner, which it was a legacy character from another campaign, and he had this elaborate history, and this banner was very important to him, but they'd stolen the banner and replaced it with that of a chicken or a plucked chicken, and they could never figure out who it was, and everyone blamed Shane for months, and it turned out to be the druid who was doing it to frame Shane. But no, that should tell you the type of character he was playing, because no one expected anyone else to have done this but Shane. But
we had a question in the chat that says, is it true that Shane tried to get away with rule breaking stuff as a player, but then was disappointed if he was allowed to get away with rule breaking stuff?
We were all pretty rules lawyery. All of us spent a lot of time poring over the rules to see exactly how we could maximize what was in there. So I wouldn't say he tried to break the rules, more so that he tried to sell his interpretation of rules. And we all did it. We did it in
Yeah.
any game, no matter how it went. We would argue endlessly over it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Anything from GURPS to D&D to Call of Cthulhu, whatever game you were playing, you invested far more time studying the rule book for that than you did whatever class you were trying to not fail at the time.
Right.
But no, he was actually he brought a lot of life to the table, I would say. All of the players were great players. But yeah, he was probably the little bit of hot sauce that you mix in that kind of makes everything
Spices
come
it up.
together.
Yeah.
Right. And we went from that to basically then Shane and all the people that kind of came in with him began running games too. And we started exploring other things, chill,
Oh
um,
yeah.
like I said, Call of Cthulhu. And one of the ones we kind of settled on as our go-to was GURPS for anything other than D&D. Um,
That was actually my
because,
first role-playing game.
yes,
Yeah.
it you could it was a generic system.
Yeah.
I think that might even be part of the name, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure. But it was well suited to horror adventures,
Mm-hmm.
and we would sometimes I ran a horror campaign. In fact, my last year there, it didn't have 9 players, but it was an ongoing campaign with a kind of Kolchak Monster of the Week theme,
Okay.
um, loosely held together with a patron that kept them going, taken sort of from the chill concept where you have that underlying organization. And we would often piece out to do one-offs. Shane would run, he ran a adventure one week, might have taken 2 weeks, based on the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Okay.
That was just wonderfully creepy and very well researched. And then we got into that, just over researching the history to find things to build stories off of. Well, eventually I had to graduate. You can only drag the 5-year plan out for so long. And I went into the military and kind of fell out of touch with everybody, as you do in the
Right.
military, who stayed on their own course. And when I got out of the military, I reached out, found out that he and John Hopler, and actually more than one of our friends from the initial group, had remained in Blacksburg. And I said, "Hey, I just noticed you're still in Blacksburg." And he said, "I'm glad you got in touch with me, because I started a game company and I want to send something to you to look at." And he sent me a copy of the original softbound Deadlands.
Awesome.
And I read through it, and I called him back and I said, "You had me from the rifle spin rules," because that was another thing we would do. Is Thursday nights were movie nights, and we would get together and watch um, VHS tapes from the
Mm-hmm.
local video store, King Video, and Westerns often found their way into it. And I had been a John Wayne fan forever. And in True Grit, not Rooster Cogburn, he rides across a field towards Robert Duvall and two other outlaws, after saying, I think his line is, "Fill your hands, you son of a bitch." And he pulls a pistol with one and this rifle with a large cocking lever with the
Mm-hmm.
other, and he's firing the pistol and firing the rifle, and he spins it to cock it.
Yep.
And I said, the fact that you put rules for that in, that's all I needed to see. Everything else was just gravy, but I love it. And that's when he said, "I'm glad to hear that, because I remember our games from college, and I'd like you to try to write for us. But I have a partner, so I can't just give you a gig. You're going to have to kind of prove yourself to Matt." And so I started off. I wrote, I think, a web page back, a small web page blurb, on it went on to become part of the lore with the Battle of Buffalo Wells, I think. Buffalo Walls.
Okay.
Adobe Walls. That's it. The Buffalo Hunters and Adobe Walls. Man, I'm getting old and forgetting things. But and that went well. I proved I could put complete sentence together. So they had me write a convention adventure or two, maybe. I can't remember, but that's where, well, Guess Who's Coming to Donner came from. That was actually the first adventure I wrote for them, but it wasn't published for years and years. It was just a convention adventure that year. And then he said, all right, we want you to try this. We have these dime novels, and they are a 5,000 word short story with an adventure that it basically is the short story. You like Perdition's Daughter and Independence Day. Basically, give me your adventure pitch, and then you write a short story where our characters go through it. And then he said, I want you to write us our Tomb of Horrors. And I said, well, let me think about it.
I mean, that's a tall order. I mean,
well,
on multiple levels, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we were all experienced killer GMs from college. We wrote our horror adventures designed for no one to survive them. And I thought, well, yeah, I think I can do this, but I don't. It's a weird Western setting. A dungeon isn't really appropriate. And if you look at all of our other adventures up to that point, there weren't really dungeon crawls. It just doesn't fit the Weird West thing. No. So it has to be more of an outdoor encounter thing. And that's when I reached back out to him and I said, you don't have any vampires in Deadlands. And he said, well, they're kind of really popular right now. That was back at the height of Anne Rice's Vampire Lestat.
I was just gonna ask, yeah.
And Vampire had been super popular for probably more than half a decade at this point. And there was a particular motif associated with vampires at that point. And I said, yeah, I got an idea for him. I said, I want to make the rat-faced animalistic ones. Take, Max Schreck's Nosferatu or Barlow from the Salem's Lot miniseries back when we were kids.
Yep.
Just, virtually inhuman monster. They don't talk, they don't care, they don't think. I said, let me see what I can come up with that. So I wrote up the adventure. I don't remember if I wrote everything, but I sent it to them, and Shane showed it to Matt Forbeck, who was at that time a partner in Pinnacle. And Matt told Shane, have you read this? There's like 30 of those things on that train. This is going to kill everybody. And Shane said, nah, let's do it. They'll love it. And apparently they did, shockingly. I figured, like, well, I'm having fun with it, but we'll see if anybody else does. And it looks like they did. So that, I'm pleased that Shane gave me the opportunity for this to be my first published work, and that it's still where it is today.
Well, and like we said, they've got about half the time of the Kickstarter left, and they're just shy of $100,000, which is nothing to sneeze at.
Yes.
And so,
if you're watching, pledge.
That's right. We should, if it hits 10,000 or 100,000 on the video. I mean, I don't even know what we're gonna do. Like something cool.
I'll show you what my T-shirt says. How's that?
There you go. So I'm a fan of Nosferatu and Salem's Lot. I love that you went with because you're right. Right around this time, the sexy vampires were cool, right?
Right.
I don't think Interview of the Vampire was supposed to be that, right? There was supposed to be the horror of all of these childlike vampires and what it would do to somebody, but basically everyone fell in love with Lestat. And
well, you cast Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise,
right?
I mean, what else is going to happen?
Right.
And I mean, wasn't Antonio Banderas in it too? I believe he was.
Yeah,
It was just
yeah,
like all these leading roles were, these incredibly sexy actors.
yeah.
So
Well, and then you had, like you said, White Wolf was doing sexy vampire, sexy werewolf, sexy
yeah,
mage.
in their defense, I believe they had the Nosferatu at that time.
They did.
Um,
They did.
and they had that classic look, but they were more tortured.
Yes.
You know, it's this is a hindrance. I wanted my vampires to not. I wanted them to be a plague,
Yeah.
a viral blight,
Yeah.
not something that sits and feels bad about what it once was. Or I don't even want them to have memories of what they were in this instance. I want them to be mindless for the most part. So
So So first of all, John Doom is in the chat, and thanks John Doom for using our reference URL. He was the first backer for the
oh
Kickstarter. He
wow.
got the first backer email.
Well,
So
thank you.
yeah, that's awesome. Um, so I've sort of talked a little bit about this on my channel on how vampires have gone from these horrific, demonic, vile creatures where they the crucifix and the Eucharist keep them back. They can't cross running water and they can't cross holy water. And we've seen this kind of systematic pull away of each of these more supernatural elements of defense, but also the supernatural elements of the creature, right? We ended up with sparkly vampires in
Yeah,
Twilight.
exactly.
So I love that you went back to like, no, these are a blight upon mankind. They don't think about being human anymore.
Right. The well, there are all kinds. Virtually every culture has a vampire, and
Mm-hmm.
or of some form or another. But many of them track their origins back to disease.
Mm-hmm.
And we can blame Bram Stoker for making Dracula, sexy.
Yeah.
Um, and everything kind of built off of there. But and he really tied the religious element in strongly with
Mm-hmm.
it. And to me, in my mind, that's never going to not be a part of at least Western vampires.
Right.
Um, the whole Dracula almost as an antichrist,
Yeah.
and you have the communion of his blood turns you into one. The sun is anathema to him, the
Yeah.
cross and anything related to the church. There's a lot of subtext there, and
Well, and it's
it's
this
great,
noetic
and it was
horror.
new for the time.
Yeah,
Right,
it's this like this soul like through no fault of your own in a very Christian Europe, you could be damned for all eternity because
right.
of this inverse communion, like
Baptism,
you said. Yeah,
right.
yeah, it's awesome. Uh,
And if
so
you haven't seen Voyage of the Demeter,
is
I
it good?
I strongly recommend it. It's very hard to do period horror now,
Yeah,
and especially with something where you know what the outcome is.
right. Everybody has to die.
Right. I might have a quibble or two with it, but for the most part, I think they did very well. And they have this, to me, what was just this great line. They're talking to a character from where the Dracula's coffin comes, and says, "Well, how do we kill him?" And she says, "He has plagued my village for hundreds of years. Why do you think we know how to defeat him?
If we knew how to defeat him, don't you think we
He
would have
wouldn't
done it?
be here."
Yeah.
So I think it's great. It has I would call it almost a period alien, in that you've got this
Oh,
group
yeah.
on this ship and this monster gets loose.
Okay.
They
That
don't know
is
how to kill it or fight it.
that
So
is that is a high recommendation. I mean,
and,
I kept seeing it, and I love Dracula. In fact, my wife has never seen it. We're watching Bram Stoker's Dracula tonight.
oh, excellent. Yeah.
So
The
awesome.
It also has the Onion Knight from Game of Thrones, and I could watch that guy read a phone book.
I know
So
he I'm with you. Um, so do you feel like you succeeded? That this night train is the Tomb of Horrors of Deadlands?
I would humbly say probably at this point, given it had the advantage of coming early and riding the if I can use the pun, the rails of the hype train, in that it's become so well known that facing it and beating it is a badge of
It's a
honor.
badge of honor, yeah.
There was actually a guy, maybe 10, 15 years ago. Now it couldn't have been that long, but 10 years ago or so. I wish I could remember his name, but I'm lucky I remember my wife's name. So please, if you're watching, don't take any offense of this. Had printed up "I survived night train" buttons, and he would run the convention and give them out if you lived through it. Um, and There's another Donnie Arnold from Colorado, Denver, the Denver area.
Yeah.
Who every convention he goes to, just about, he runs night train. And I'll say I have no doubt he runs it better than I do at this point, as he's run it so many more times than I have. And they've kind of spread the unholy gospel of this adventure. I think that in notoriety, certainly it probably fulfills that role. It's not as deadly as the Tomb of Horrors, I think, because there are ways, and
Yeah.
obviously people survive it, and there are easy ways to survive it. But Yeah, I mean, if you go in head first, you're going to have a fight. So
Yeah. So there's it's funny you mentioned that, like, for my that gaming weekend, I have JM killed my character and all I got was this button. Uh Tink printed them up to me. Thanks, Tink. I appreciate it. She's in the chat tonight.
Awesome. I can't see the chat. I'm sorry. I don't know why.
Oh, it's totally okay. It's it would only be on Twitch that you would be able to see it. I don't have it set up.
That explains it.
Which is why I keep repeating the questions that we see, because
Well, thank you. Because I'm sitting here looking at the chat bar on the side going, I got nothing.
yeah. Yes, John, I am bringing some of these buttons so that I can give you one.
Awesome.
He's going to be out at. Are you going to Gamehole Con? I guess I should ask.
No, I am
Uh-huh.
not. I have become more engrossed in real life at this point. I don't do as many conventions as I used to.
Totally fair.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: so you did Night Train, and then you did a follow-up adventure to it.
Yes, and it was actually named after the blurb on the back of the original dime novel, called "For Whom the Whistle Blows." And it's set later in the timeline, after the night trains had been around. And actually, if I'm recalling the story right, and you'll forgive me if I forget the details of some of my own work at this point, but conceptually, the idea is that the night trains had largely been defeated through the acts of the rangers, posses of heroes, and the agency. But yes, there is that one, which I tried to breathe new life into the idea.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit bigger. It's not, Night Train, the adventure is pretty much as big as you want to make it, but this one does cover a little more ground, so to speak.
All right, so we've got a question in the chat. To add on to it, if everyone is dead from trying to play the original, how is there a follow-up, or how has the Night Train been made easier for this new version? Has it been made easier for the new version?
I don't believe. I would say the only reason I suspect that it plays any easier now is just an artifact of the game system. The original Deadlands game, we had hit locations, we had wind, we had combat took a lot longer, and was often harder to bring something down.
Yeah.
Now in Savage Worlds, we've put more of a focus on making things flow quickly, a more cinematic type of gameplay. They're still really hard to kill, but if it is any easier, that would be the only reason, because the Night Train adventure itself is exactly the same, just with stats updated. And For Whom the Whistle Blows was written for Deadlands Reloaded, so there really isn't much change there. But it is, as I said, it is a bigger adventure, and it brings in elements that aren't in the first. And, you know, like I said, there's ways to survive Night Train, and people have run into it head on and fought their way through it. But you don't have to have played the original adventure
to play.
right for your posse to take part in For Whom the Whistle Blows. In fact, in some ways, it has more impact if you haven't played it, because the surprise is there.
But now you've come back after 25 years and you've written The Bank Job.
That actually precedes For Whom the Whistle Blows.
All right, so it actually goes Night Train, Bank Job, For Whom the Whistle Blows.
Only if you're talking historically.
Okay.
You could arrange them however you want in your own timeline. There's nothing that says you can't play For Whom the Whistle Blows first and then bring Night Train in later. But The Bank Job was a spin on Night Train that I took for a convention adventure. It was we had moved to Spokane, Washington. It was either the first or second Spokon that they had there in town, and those grew into just amazing conventions. I'm not sure they still go on or not. I've been gone for a while, back to Virginia, but I wanted to kind of put a twist on it, and anybody that was getting into the game with me, I didn't want them to know up front what they were coming up against. In it, you play black hats, basically, hence the title.
Yeah.
You're involved in something that gets you into the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's intended to be a one-shot, or that's how I wrote it. How you use it is entirely up to the marshal, and exactly how virtuous, let's say, that the posse is. And you can probably work it so that they don't have to be, greedy desperados for it to function in your game. But that's how it was originally written. And the idea behind that, I would say, informed For Whom the Whistle Blows, but they are very different. We had to tweak some of the encounters from one or the other when we put them together, because there were some individual encounter similarities, because it never occurred to me that we might want to publish this. This was something that I just had on my computer for, good Lord, over a dozen years. And they came forward and said, we're doing this. I said, hey, I've got this adventure that literally one group of people has played, not counting my home group in Spokane.
Right.
Do we want to add this on? It might be a neat little bonus, so to speak, something utterly new. And they went with it, and Daryl Hayhurst really stepped in and kind of tightened everything up on both it and For Whom the Whistle Blows. And I like what he's finished up with.
That's awesome. I'm a big fan of Daryl. He's a good guy.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
What he's brought to the table is just beyond calculation, in my opinion. He seems to be able to do everything, and it's rare that you get somebody that can do that and do them all well.
Yeah.
So,
well, John. Go ahead.
I was going to say, John from the Knights had asked me to record something for him, and I'm going to put the onus back on him since he's watching. Go ahead and get your recorder ready, or you can pull this off of the YouTube video when it posts. But I'm going to give you silent 5 second countdown, and I'm going to give you what you asked for your own personal use. And I hope I don't botch it the first time around. Okay. You just got goffed.
I will get this over. I will point out to James. I'll be like, "Hey, 39 minutes in, you have your soundbite. Go for it and grab it."
He said he asked me to make that recording because that apparently is a term that his posse now uses if they're killed playing one of my adventures, and I think he wants to be able to play that. So
I will let him know. If you guys don't know, Knights of the Smith Dinner Table are going to be running Night Train for one of their one shots over Halloween. We'll post it on the Iconic socials. We'll link to them. We'll make sure that they get signal boosted from us because we want to see more Night Train goodness. Like, this is awesome. Like, I actually missed Night. I did not. I was aware of Deadlands. I think I had the Deadlands Reloaded book. But I missed Night Train, so I'm really excited to have kind of the definitive work here
nice.
coming out that can sit on my bookshelf right here next to all of my other Deadlands goodness.
I'm looking at the wall behind you, and I'm trying to decide if you actually might have more books than I do from the Savage Worlds universe, and I'm not sure. There may be one up there that I don't have. Regardless, that's an impressive collection, including the badge in the back there.
Oh, how I actually got into Savage Worlds was I had been streaming for Ulysses. I've been doing a lot of Torg streaming, and my time with Ulysses came to an end, and I got to keep the studio. And so I had met Shane through a mutual friend at their wedding, and so I just was like, why not? Hey, Shane, do you guys want me to run something for you? And they were like,
Awesome.
we've got this thing called The Horror at Headstone Hill. Do you think you could do that in about 12 episodes? And I was like, let me see. And so that turned into me helping them with Savage Universe, and I'm going to go play some Savage Worlds and Doomguard out at Gamehole Con later this week, and which is just really, as you said, an unfortunately named con. I have made many inappropriate jokes. Don't hold that against me, Gamehole Con. I thank you for everything you're doing for us for our
It's a great convention, and I wish I could make it. It sounds like half the Pinnacle crew are going to be there this time, not more. But yeah, that is the direct interpersonal relationships are how a lot of people get their start with Shane.
Yeah.
Matt Cutter just came to him and said, "Hey, I've got an adventure at a convention," and that turned into Cutter eventually helming the entire Deadlands setting.
Cutter wrote the Horror at Headstone Hill, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And I mean, just meeting Shane's not enough. Obviously, you have to get it, but that I think that meeting him kind of lets him know if you get it quickly.
Yes.
But I was going to mention it's not only the Night Train adventures, but also we collected all of the dime novels.
Yes.
And they had me go through this last year, I believe, and update everything to the new post Morgana Weird West so that it all works within it, because all of this was written before. And if you came into them and read them knowing only the new setting, you would be like, what is he talking about here? Wait, they're still at war? What is going on?
Yeah.
So all of that is fixed, I hope. And I'm hoping that, Daryl went over it after I went over it just to make sure that I didn't stroke out in the middle of a sentence somewhere. That is a real threat. But so I'm excited to see that.
Yeah. The dime novels coming back. I love so one of my players got me, I have a Cause of Death stamp that I can stamp character sheets with. So the fact that I get toe tags for Night Train is that's icing on the cake.
I started bringing toe tags to conventions for games and handing them out. and I actually have a Night Train stamp myself
Oh,
that I would
awesome.
stamp on them. But yeah, I'm glad those seem to be a popular addition to the set. So I'm glad those have taken well, those have gone over well.
Well, we're getting the book, we're getting maps, we're getting wanted posters, toe tags, pawns, archetypes, a new adventure, and a commemorative wild die, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with what they put together. I can take virtually no credit for anything other than, the adventures, the packaging, the concepts behind it. And like if I while I did toe tags, I think they may have come up with this idea entirely organic to the creation crew behind the package that they put together. But I'm going to claim it anyway.
There you
So
go. You heard it here first, folks. Those were John Goff's ideas.
absolutely.
That's right.
I did the art for this, everything, the
That's right.
layout. I'm in fact binding the books in my house as we speak.
Mixing the glue up. Don't ask where it
Yes,
came from, but all sourced and produced by John Goff.
absolutely, 100%.
That's right. Now we just need to get that sound effect so that we can just say, Shane, you've just been goffed. And then, well,
Um,
John, thanks for joining me. This was
oh,
awesome.
absolutely. It's been a blast. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I always enjoy being able to just hang out with people and talk about their experiences with gaming. Like this is awesome. Like this is if I could just do this full time, I would just interview people full time about gaming. Like this is my favorite thing to do is just sit
That
around and talk.
that would be the job, without a doubt. The well, thank
Yeah.
you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Go check out Night Train. If you haven't done it, I just put the link in the chat. If you're watching this on YouTube, the link will be in the show notes. It is sadly, I mean, we've gone up, but we did not cross.
Yeah, it looks like maybe two more backers
I think two more
and
backers, about
and
another 100
100.
bucks.
So hey, that's better than I'd hoped. So I was afraid we'd lose some.
So we did have one final question here. Your
Sure.
Dream Shaper, glad to have you in the chat, man. Tinker Hellraiser, who put together the beautiful card that we opened with and does all of our social media. So thank you as always, Tink. So beyond personal connection, do you have any advice for aspiring game or Savage Worlds writers?
Yes. What I tell anyone is before you approach a company, check to see if they have writer's guidelines, if they tell you what they're looking for. But most importantly, when you make a submission, read what they produce, look at what they have put out, and make your stuff look like that from the onset. Organize headings, uh, the size of your sections. If you look, for example, Pinnacle, we usually do a header every 3 to 4 paragraphs to break things up.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it easier to keep that pace going. Stuff like that, how they format their monsters. The easier you make it on them to look at your stuff and see if it fits, the more likely they're going to keep looking at it.
Yeah.
Um, and spell check. A good way to get in besides personal connections is just be active on any pages where they conduct social media or
Yeah.
any forums. That is a great way to get noticed and to show that you know what you're talking about and that you get it.
Yeah.
That's what I would say if you're starting out. And sometimes pushing the boundaries, so to speak, will get you noticed with a project, but usually it's best to start off safe, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Far more things get turned down that are just way out there than get turned down because, well, this is very much like what we're doing. I
Yeah.
like it. So
Yeah. They love Deadlands. So if you're coming out with a Deadlands project, make it Deadlands. Like lean
right,
into it.
go with what's there. don't start out trying to change the mythology or add major characters to it.
Yeah.
Use what you're given,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of stuff in most game lines, as you know.
Yeah.
You look at Pathfinder, you look at D&D, you look at Deadlands, just about any of the major settings have a lot. And if you want to write for that setting, write for that setting. So I hope that helps. I don't know.
No, that's great advice. And the other thing that I was just going to add, Tank, is, I mean, and this is a little self-serving, I'll admit, because I'm the liaison for, all of the licensees, but put up something on fan use, start a podcast about Savage
Absolutely.
Worlds, put something on Swag, get your name out there. You would be amazed. Like, so the whole reason am even where I am at sort of today in the industry is because I started a podcast about one of my favorite games at the time. And now I'm the line developer for that game line because, as you just said, it showed. I need more coffee. It showed that I knew the game and I had studied enough to know what was going on behind the scenes. And I think that's plus. I mean, who doesn't like to hear other people talking about the thing they created with love? I mean, that's just an awesome thing to experience as a designer or a writer.
And there are avenues right now that didn't exist when I
Yeah.
started, and that's Savage Worlds has a fan license. Savage Worlds
Mm-hmm.
has a license level beyond that, and you can publish your own stuff now and sell it through Drive Through RPG and other outlets using those things, and give yourself your own resume.
Yeah.
If that you can prove that you could write with other projects. And before, that wasn't really a chance. You proved you could write by proving you could write when you got the job.
Yeah.
So
Well, awesome. John, thank you so much for joining us. And
absolutely.
this is not going to be a regular show to start. This will just be a show that, as I have people who are available, we're going to get on. We're going to just talk about games. I think the next one I have is Alexander of Autark. We're going to be talking about the Adventure Conqueror King 2 Kickstarter, but that's going to be in November. So this was perfectly timed. We got in while the Night Train Kickstarter was going on, right before Halloween. We got to talk a little bit. I now have stories to bug Shane about when I go to Gamehole Con, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking some time and hanging out and talking about games.
Absolutely.
All right, so until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I'm JM. This has been Beyond the Table, and we'll talk with you all later. Have a good one.